I really want us to step gently into a story of seeds, a story of justice and ancestral food wisdom, as it were, because we're looking at a landmark ruling here. The High Court of Kenya has declared that sharing, saving, and exchanging indigenous seeds is not a crime. Okay, overturning punitive provisions that threatened generations of farmers with fines and imprisonment under old seed laws. Big victory this is. Okay, so the discussion that we're going to be having, and that's been had over the last couple of days following this ruling, really upholds what many of our communities have always known deep in their bones, that seeds are life, seeds are memory, seeds are a contribution to sovereignty. So this is not a small case. This is a big deal because we are looking at forging pathways towards climate justice. We're looking at food sovereignty and agro-ecological resilience across the African region. So I really feel like this is a victory for everyone. But of course, not taking away from the fact that Kenyans have worked very, very hard to of course, see this victory come to fruition in this lifetime. And this marks a new chapter when we look at biodiversity, when we look at community-led agriculture and honoring what has been happening over the last several years, as it were. So I want us to have a conversation about this victory, about what's been happening with seed laws in Kenya and what this victory means. On the line with me, agroecologist and food sovereignty advocate Claire Nasike Akello, a woman whose work has really just been forged through that intersection of ecology and justice and ancestral knowledge through the work that she's been doing as well through her foundation. Claire, thank you so much for joining me. It's a pleasure to connect with you after so many years.
Hey, Mmatsheko, how are you doing? I
Good.
hope I got your name's pronunciation right.
Yes, you did. You did. Thank you so much, Claire. It is a
Ah,
pleasure
great,
to talk
great.
to you. And we're talking about something that is victorious. We're talking about something that is good. But perhaps before we get into the nitty gritties of the case, Claire, could you briefly walk us through what exactly the court ruling changed, and I guess what parts of the old law have been unstuck as you and I speak.
All right, thank you very much for having me on the show, Mmatsheko. It's really a pleasure to be here today. And in terms of the ruling, so there are sections of the law that we call the Seed and Plant Varieties Act,
Mm-hmm.
Cap 326 of 2012. So there are various sections, and I'll start with Section 3D. So Section 3D, essentially, it had allowed seed inspectors to actually work on the farmers' farms and detain their seeds. So if these seeds are found to be uncertified or unregistered, so the inspectors had the mandate to actually detain the farmers' seeds. And then also we have other sections like Section 10, Part 4, which allowed for farmers to be actually jailed. So if they are found registering seeds when they are not registered as seed merchants themselves. So as seed merchants themselves, that means that they have to be registered by an organization called KEFIS in Kenya. That's Kenya Health Inspectorate Service. So that's the government body that is responsible for the registration, farmers registration, and so forth. So if farmers
Right.
are found to be selling these seeds and they're not registered as seed merchants, then they would be arrested and jailed for 1 year or pay a fine of 1 million Kenya shillings. So those are just the key ones. Of course, then we have the seed regulations of 2016 as well, which also, did not allow for farmers to be able to share seeds that um, are certified. We have a national index list certified within our country.
Mm-hmm.
So if farmers are found sharing seeds that are not on that national index list, they were committing a criminal offense. So in a nutshell, that's what the court termed unconstitutional, and which was a huge victory for us because indigenous seeds, as you may know, indigenous seeds are not certified. Indigenous seeds are not registered.
Right.
farmers breed these seeds on their farms, sharing and selling amongst themselves. So
Mm-hmm.
they have no formal certification.
Hmm. Claire, are you still there? I think we're having some trouble connecting with your line. Can you still hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. I can hear you now. We've
Oh,
been
great.
restored. Thank you for that background. I think it was critical to really get an understanding as to how, indigenous wisdom and farming management and food systems have been operating in Kenya over the last several years, particularly in leading up to this case and the victory, as we noted, Claire. Let's talk about, just following on that thought around seed systems, as it were, farmer managed seed systems. I want to say, how do they contribute to climate resilience and matters of biodiversity? Food security is quite a big buzzword right now, especially in light of climate change affecting so many African countries and, of course, in Kenya as well.
Thank you again, Mmatsheko, for that. I think when it comes to climate resilience, these indigenous seeds are diverse. And
Mm-hmm.
not only are they diverse, but they have been tried and tested by the farmers on their farms. So there is no other technological advancement than what the farmers are already doing with the seeds on their farms. So when we talk of them being climate resilient, it means that they have acclimatized to the local weather conditions of our areas, of the farmers' areas. So then the farmers know which kind of seed variety then can they grow whenever there is a minimal rainfall, which kind of seed variety can they grow and will be able to germinate in 3 months and give them food. So in that way, then the seeds themselves are climate resilient because they have been tried and tested over time by the farmers on their farms. And
Right.
so they know which ones are resilient to which season. And then when it comes to diversity, these seeds are diverse in nature. You cannot have one indigenous seed similar to the other. They are diverse in nature. So by
Mm.
them being diverse in nature, that means that when they are planted in the soils, they produce different biodiversity, different agricultural diversity. Yeah, like they
Right.
enrich the agricultural diversity on the farm. And
Mm.
essentially, what that means is that the food that is harvested and placed on the table is also diverse. It is different in nature. So
Mm.
then they are not just promoting the different biodiversity on the farm, but they are also leading to different food types on our plates, which then are important when it comes to nutrition. Because remember, when we have issues to do with nutrition, we're always thinking of obesity, malnutrition, kids are not getting enough nutrients from food. So
Mm.
these indigenous seeds then lead to that because they allow for production of a wide variety of crops on the farm, which eventually end up on the plate.
Right. I love that. Thank you very much, Claire. If you've just tuned in, we are in conversation with Claire Nasike Akello, and she is joining us as an agro-ecologist from Kenya. We are talking about the victory around seed laws in Kenya. But, in my reading up on the case, in my reading up on seed systems in Kenya, it sparks a lot of other questions, Claire, because despite the win, I would imagine, and from what I've read, that there are still many challenges that remain to ensure that traditional seed systems are supported. I think that is quite fundamental post this victory, Claire. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how the traditional seed systems are going to be supported going forward. Perhaps when you look at also the protection and scaling of this. So, for example, when we look at matters of policy alignment, very important in this victory going forward. Access to land, which is such a universal problem on the continent. Community seed banks are another one when it comes to just transmission of knowledge and really preservation of what we already have.
Thanks again, Masheko. I think when it comes to the next steps in this law, it is very, very clear that the law was favoring the hybrid seeds, the commercial seed varieties,
Right.
and infringing on the rights of farmers. And this is specifically on the control and ownership and sharing of the indigenous seed varieties. And so, what we are looking to going forward is that we're going to have a review of these particular sections that were actually very punitive to the farmers. So we want a law that allows for the commercial seed varieties to coexist peacefully with the farmer managed seed systems. The reason I say that is Kenya is a party to UPOV 1991. UPOV 1991, this is like the international sort of law that guides the plant breeders' rights, that ensures that these plant breeders get actually their rights when it comes to patenting these seeds, because this is their invention. So of course there is that, but then we want also to exist separately a law that recognizes farmers' rights. Why do we say that? Because our Constitution of Kenya, which is the supreme law of the land, allows farmers to own their genetic resources and to benefit from any let's say monetary benefits or whatever benefit it is that accrue from the use of genetic resources. So, and then our constitution also, I think in Article 43, we as Kenyans are supposed to be free from hunger. So then how can we be free from hunger as Kenyans when we do not have seeds? Farmers do not have seeds in
Right.
their hands. So what we are saying is, as much as Kenya is a party to these international conventions, we would also want to have a law specifically that governs farmer managed seed systems, a law that allows farmers to control their seeds, to own their seeds, to breed their seeds, to sell their seeds. Because when you look at the statistics in terms of numbers, over 80% of the seeds that are used in food production in Kenya today, these are seeds that come from farmer managed seed systems. So the whole sector, I mean, farmers can remember seeds are grains too, right? So when they have enough to eat for their households, they take the surplus to the markets. So those are the informal systems that I'm speaking about. So then having a law that allows for farmers to own their seeds. We have countries in Africa, for example, in Ethiopia, there's a law that caters to the plant breeders, that there's a law that caters to the farmers' rights in terms of no farmers owning and selling their seeds. So that's all we are asking for, that across Africa, let this be an example that you cannot infringe on the farmers' rights to own seeds, because seeds are common. Seeds are like water and air. They can't be patented. They can't be owned by an individual. And that's
Right.
why we
Yeah.
have like a communal ownership of these resources. So all we are asking is for the government to take into consideration the ruling of the court and to sort of review this law so that the farmer managed seed systems can coexist peacefully with the commercial seed varieties. Let the people or the farmers who wish to choose the commercial seed varieties, who wish to purchase them, do that. But let our farmers continue to keep their genetic resource, continue to use them, because this genetic resource is what enriches and influences our generation. Because if seeds are taken away from the hands of farmers, you can imagine if we have a pandemic like we had the COVID-19 one, right? Will farmers wait for seeds to be brought, let's say, for example, from South Africa to Kenya when the borders are closed? Yes, the farmers could actually just have the seeds in their own hands. When it's the rainy season, they can actually plant.
That's
So that's
right. Yeah.
all we are asking for from the government. And across Africa, we're telling, this is like also a message to other African countries, that there are rights that cannot be infringed upon. And this is the right to seed and food. Because from seed, when you control the seed, you also control the food. So you can imagine if farmers only have access to commercial hybrid seeds, and some of these hybrid seeds, they are not manufactured in our, they are not manufactured in our countries. They are not manufactured by companies that belong in Africa. You'll find some of them are owned by multinational companies. So who is benefiting from this? It's the multinational companies that own these seeds. They come and collect our germplasm from the farmers, the original seed germplasm from the farmers. And then they go and create the hybrid seeds using the farmers' germplasm. But do the farmers benefit from that? No. They want now to charge farmers. This is where the patenting comes in. So you have to pay royalties to be able to use this particular seed variety.
This is a very, very, very important issue that we're discussing with Claire on the line. Thank you very much, Claire. And also, I've always admired just your crossroads in terms of the work that you're doing in activism, in ecology, in community wisdom, because it's not a separate conversation. All of that is one conversation, which then, we've run out of time. It's so unfortunate, but you have to come back because there's so much more to talk about. But I'm thinking now, because this is everybody's business. It's not just about the farmer. It's not just about what's happening at a policy level or through the justice system. People that are the consumers of this food, you and I, ordinary people, it is our business as well. So how can urban and non-farming communities, if I could put it that way, people like our listeners as well, who want to support or who want to engage with this movement towards agroecology, Claire, and food sovereignty, which is everyone's business. How can we make sure that we support these movements going forward and really preserve seed knowledge, not just for us, but also for future generations, just as we wrap up our conversations?
Thanks for that. I think when it comes to the food and seed sovereignty movement, this is not exclusive to farmers and consumers alone. This is for all of us. And so one of the things that we can do, first of all, we all come from farming families. So if your mother is not a farmer or your father, you have a relative somewhere who is a farmer, who produces food.
Yeah.
And so what we are asking is that if you have the capacity to save seeds, save those seeds, grow the seeds. If you have the capacity to own land, till land, grow seeds, indigenous seeds on your land. Because these indigenous seeds, time is coming when they are not going to be available to the local people. So make sure you keep seeds. Join a seed banking community where you are actually saving the traditional seeds. And if you can't grow seeds, you don't have land. We always say you can grow food on your balcony, even the tiniest of the tomatoes, the cherry tomatoes, those tiny ones. You can grow them in pots. You can still do urban gardening on your balconies where you're growing the tiny vegetables in your pots. So you can go and get seeds from the communities that are actually saving them and grow those tiny vegetables in your pots. Aside from that, you can also buy food if you're a consumer and you cannot completely manage to grow food even in a tiny pot. You can buy food that directly comes from the farmers. So if it's at the farmers markets, because the more you buy food that comes directly from the farmers, you are encouraging these farmers to keep growing food. And what do they use to grow food? The indigenous seeds. And then the other thing is that let us also embrace our traditional foods. Because what I've seen is that the farmers stop growing some of these traditional foods that come from the traditional seeds. Because as consumers, our tastes have changed, our palates have changed. We are used to junk food. For example, let's say South Africa, you eat white pap all the time, which is the same thing as Kenyans. We eat white ugali all the time. When we have sorghum, we have millet, which are actually very rich in nutrients that we can actually also embrace. So let us embrace these other traditional foods as well, because when we embrace these foods, then we are giving the farmer a chance to keep on growing food. That's the way that I would say we support this movement. Because if we stop consuming these foods, then farmers also stop producing food. Then land will be left idle because there's nobody using the land to produce food. Remember this conversation again. It is a holistic one. So we are talking about seeds, water, and land, and the well-being of consumers.
Claire, thank you very much. It is literally 1:00 on the dot, and I think our Zoom is going to cut us off. Thank you for your knowledge, and also just for merging, the work of the farmers with the consumer, with, with justice work and everything that you are doing. Very important. Your voice has been very significant in this conversation around food sovereignty as an advocate and in your capacity as an agroecologist. Thank you once again.